Well, good morning everyone in the chamber and those of you watching from home. This is an extraordinary meeting of Council to consider receipt of and approval of the annual report for 2023 to 2024. We have Zoom attendees and Chris Jennett, who's our lead auditor from Audit New Zealand, and also Michael Day is on Zoom. Michael Day, of course, our Chief Executive. We have apologies this morning from Mayor Clark, who's in Wellington on Council business, and Councillor Kett. Will someone move that we receive those apologies? Thanks, Grant. Seconded Trish. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay, so we have only one topic on the agenda this morning, and that is to receive and hopefully adopt the 2024 annual report. So leading us through that process will be Patricia, the CFO. Thank you, Patricia.
Morena, councillors. Morning. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a tag team between Chris and myself, but I will be going through the document at a high level and what has happened during the year and the results, and then Chris can come in and deal with the audit opinion. It is not a standard audit opinion, so it needs some explanation. And then we'll work through to the resolutions. So it is with pleasure that after this long period we have finally ready to adopt the annual report for the year ending June 2024. What is pleasing to see is that Council has been able to maintain its performance across its non-financial performance measures. We had 99 performance measures for the year, 71 of those were achieved, which is a 72% achievement of those, which is the same as what we had for the 23 financial year. But what was interesting to see that we had stabilised performance in many areas, and those with attendance type numbers, we are back to pre-COVID levels. From a financial point of view, the Council had an operating deficit before tax of 9.5 million. This was 2.6 million worse than what we had planned, principally due to the impacts of inflation and insurance and interest rates, but it was 1.2 million better than we had a deficit in the 2023 financial year. When we look at a group perspective, because this is also the Council Group's financial statements, the operating deficit after tax and discontinued operations was a deficit of 7.7 million. That's actually 43.4 million better than the 23 financial year, when the group had a very large write-off impairment of its investment in Invercargill Central Limited. Now, I say after discontinued operations is that the group numbers are impacted by the changes that Holdings have been going through during the year, and that its sale of the Roaring Forties partnership, or Southern Generation partnership within its group, which that sale completed on the 27th of June, and is actually one of the principal reasons why we are not here towards the end of November rather than the end of October, because of the technicalities of auditing that transaction, but also the proposed sale, which was announced earlier this week, of the Pylon subsidiaries, which has to be impacted and shown as a discontinued operation. Also, for Council in the 2024 year, we completed a full revaluation of our three waters assets, so that's our water supply, wastewater and stormwater assets, and that resulted in a 73.2 million increase in the value of those, the book value of those assets. which brought the total assets of council up to just shy of $1.4 billion. That's an increase of 89.3 million on the prior year, whereas the group is sitting with 1.6 billion of total assets, and that's actually up 104 million on the prior year. As of yesterday, Audit New Zealand had completed all their audit work. So the Risk and Assurance Committee had a discussion and worked through in public excluded on Tuesday. The issues with the audit will come through to those shortly, but they had completed their audit work yesterday and were able to give us clearance for this morning's meeting. Also, in Tuesday's Risk and Assurance Committee, there was a question raised about the $4 million increase in direct charges revenue that has resulted higher than annual plan, and I agreed that I would come back to this meeting and give the breakdown for that. It isn't a easy breakdown. There's going to be a bit of detail here. Direct charges revenue line includes all the revenue that's typically our fees and charges revenue that doesn't have another line. So that includes anything when we've recovered costs from people. It includes the transfer station revenue, our costs from our building consents and resource consents. What's such a large line? But some of the reasons for that 4 million being higher than planned was also due to timing. So when we looked at the full breakdown across each activity, there was a 2 million of additional revenue cost recovery from NZTA on work we had done on NZTA's roads. In the solid waste area, we had a $1.8 million higher share of waste net revenue, 900,000 higher transfer station revenue, 300,000 higher recycling revenues. Within the sewage area, we had 600,000 of more trade waste revenue. In the corporate area, we had 300,000 of higher revenues from petrol tax and service charges. And within the theatres and arts, there was another $500,000 higher cost recoveries. So while we might have had a higher cost, we've also got higher revenues. We're looking at this on a gross basis. Now, all that's offset by lower revenues in a number of areas, including the regulatory area, which was down by 1.1 million. Across the parks and aquatics, so this is principally from pools, cemeteries and the crematorium fees, that was 900,000 lower, and we had $300,000 lower water bills. So that's where that 4 million has come from.
Okay. Patricia, if you just pause there for a moment. Councillor Pottinger, you asked that question about that. Are you comfortable with that response?
Look, I'd really not comment because that question was asked in public excluded risk insurance.
Okay. Patricia, carry on.
So within Appendix 2 to the paper is the letter of representation that Council are to provide to Audit New Zealand. Now, that letter of representation is in its typical standard form. I have also included one for the benefit of Council from management to them, which is in the same form, but it is Council's management giving those same assurances so that you have additional comfort there. There is a specific representation in relation to the pylon sale, and that comes through from the holdings group, that it was not highly probable that the sale would go ahead until such time as Council gave a shareholder major transactions approval, which we were happy to give. There are a number of misstatements included at the end of that attachment. These are all uncorrected misstatements. They sit below the materiality threshold and have been agreed in discussion with Audit New Zealand. The biggest one there is that judgmental misstatement, which is on the revaluation of the assets, which was the use of an index, an estimated index. And as soon as you use an estimated index, the actual will probably come through as a different one. So it's a judgmental error. and because we revalue our assets on such a regular basis, it'll come out in the wash. In relation to the audit opinion, it is a limited scope opinion, I think we'd say, Chris. I think that's how you said it's got a minor qualification, and that is not in relation to numbers. The financials are essentially unqualified. It is in relation to one performance measure that we have. It is a DIA prescribed performance measure, and that is in relation to road smoothness. Now, last year we had some issues with the traffic count numbers that go into that measure. That issue has been corrected, but it's been identified that that measure is a combination of current, estimated and historic numbers, traffic counts. The issue being is that some of the historic ones in our case, the system would indicate they are very old and probably too old. So there is no, we cannot validate when those measures were added into the system. So it's something we are looking at going forward about how we validate it. And as a result, because we can't revalidate it, it is a qualification.
Patricia, it's always irksome to have a qualification, no matter how minor, I guess. But if and when you fix it up this year, will that be likely to disappear for our annual report for next year, or is it one of those qualifications that, because it's historical, just keeps drifting on some kind of?
My guess would be if we managed to fully correct it this year, the qualification would still stay in the 25 annual report, but would go in the 26th. My only concern there is because of their performance measures, we tend to disclose 4 or more years of comparative information, and that is something that we'll have to work through with Chris, unless Chris, you want to jump in on that one.
No, I think what you're saying is factual, Patricia. I wouldn't want to prejudge an opinion for a future year, but that flow-through impact, as I think you're highlighting there. I think you've outlined qualification well.
Thank you.
Okay. Now that's probably, from the audit opinion, that's probably the best time now to pass over to Chris for anything he needs to add into that.
Chris, the floor's yours.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Patricia. I don't actually have much to add. I think Patricia's outlined what I was going to cover quite well. It's what we refer to as an except for type of qualification, so it's very much ring-fenced to one matter, as has been highlighted, and the previous year issue being about actual traffic counts used, and the current year issue being about the age of the estimates made that underlie that performance measure, which is what's reflected in I think that's broadly it in terms of the opinion. Look, we'd just like to extend my thanks to management for their preparation, their efforts, and engagement with us throughout the audit. Look, we really do appreciate working towards a collaborative approach that we've had. So thank you, Patricia, Stephanie, and team.
Chris, because it does seem to be a much smoother and more efficient process than I think has maybe occurred in the past. So well done for everybody involved in that to get to this point. Do councillors have any questions of Chris? Okay, thank you, Chris. So Patricia, back to you.
I think there's one last piece that I wanted to do, and Chris has probably got ahead of me this time, so it's only fair. I actually want to recognise that the piece of work that the annual report is. I think the team probably started this in March. We're doing the pre-audit work because the audit team do come in normally around Easter, right through. It isn't just the finance team. While it tends to be the finance team that you see presenting it, it does actually have input from across the organisation, and that input has been right through, and I need to thank all the whole teams, for their input and for their work. Often, especially as we get towards the end, much of it is you need to drop your day job to do this because we are working to a deadline. So I wish to thank them, but I also want to thank the Audit New Zealand team. We have been working in a very collaborative way. They've been raising issues early. We've been able to work through them together, and while we had some of the team here, we have a predominantly remote audit, which has its own challenges, and we have seemed to fit into a nice way of working with that. And I want to thank Chris and his team because they've been able to work with us, and we've worked with them in a really good way.
Thank you. Questions to Patricia? Thank you. Well, we of course had a Risk and Assurance Committee meeting on the 19th of November. Most councillors in the room attended that, and we had a fairly long meeting then, and it was in this in a whole lot more detail. It was recommended by the Audit and Risk Committee at that meeting that the report should be recommended to Council for approval, subject to some matters which were not quite finalised. Patricia, as I understand that those all have now been finalised, and the Audit and Risk Committee gave to 3 individuals the authority to, having satisfied themselves that those matters had been finalised, to recommend to Council that the report be adopted. So that's the position we're at. I have just one question to you, Patricia, and it's a small matter, but in the 4th dot point under key issues, where you say that the Chair of Risk and Assurance, the Chair of Finance and Policy, and the Mayor would approve the once certain documents were received, they would approve that they could come through to full council. It was actually me that did that,
Yes,
wasn't it?
So apologies, that was a haste issue.
So do you want to add Deputy Mayor? I suppose I was acting Mayor at the time.
It was Deputy Mayor that it was that was given that power, and they were all advised yesterday as soon as we had clearance that we had satisfied all those
and you'll
matters.
correct those, won't you? You'll correct that point.
That's correct.
Because historically people look back and say it was a Mayor. And the 5th point has got exactly the same point in it, I think, where it refers to the Mayor. Is that this?
That's correct. It should be Deputy Mayor.
Okay. So if there are no more questions to Patricia, then there are recommendations over the page, in total 8 of those.
I'll move that way.
For all of them?
Yes, for all 8.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Grant. Does anyone have any issues with dealing with them all at the same time? No. Okay. So we will deal with them all at the same time then. I think that's okay, isn't it, Madam Governance? So we have a move on a seconder. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. So that, I think, ends the business of this meeting, and so I thank you all for attending, and those on live stream, thanks for getting up a little bit early in the morning to come to this unusually early meeting. But thank you, and bye.